K-pop Demon Hunters. And K-pop Demon Hunters is basically Slopified because they went ahead with the cartoon, the anime first, and the anime required music because it was about K-pop. And then they went and they wrote the music first, and then they went and they found performers after that to perform the music. Because number one, it's anime, so you don't get characters aging out. Number two, you've captured this group of core kind of like 8 to 12, 14-year-olds when they're very young. So they're gonna progress. The age group is gonna progress older, and so you're gonna own this property as they get older and as they have more money to spend. It's kind of slop that became not non-slop, right? It's slopified, kind of like we just need something to fill the time, and it became non-slop. So it's pretty cool.
Yeah, right. Like OpenAI and Anthropic are trying to justify basically $1 trillion valuation, right? And I think like the story is kind of simple. The tech is magical. It's hard to adopt it. So okay, if it's a magical tech, then we should put like a huge price tag. But when you're sometimes looking at the economical realities, it doesn't work out like that. There are like a ton of examples where the service is extremely valuable, but like very, very hard to monetize, right? Like I think sometimes when you're doing like a course in economics, like firefighters is a great example. Okay, people back in the day tried to have firefighters as private companies. It was like really hard to extract value like that, right? So at some point, okay, like the governments in most places, the board decided to own it. So now like we have like this interesting story where I think it's kind of clear that Chinese companies, like DeepSeek, Moonshot, they're like really not that far behind in LLMs. But if you look at the valuations of these companies at their last round, we're talking about, I don't know, tens of billions, like maybe around like 50. No one is talking about $1 trillion, but like, wait a second, guys, it's like the same underlying tech. So what's going on? So I think it's, we sometimes internally calling like the CapEx trap. These guys spend like so much on the data center, so much in compute, like raise such a crazy amount of money and created such an expectations that they just like really try to create a business model that's a toll road, right? Like that every time that you touch their model, you're paying. Maybe it could work in the past, but given the availability of Chinese model, I just like don't see how it's gonna unfold like that. So imagine that in the world of world models, we are providing an alternative to people who do not want a toll road business model. So we're coming and say, listen, guys, if you're not hitting $10 million threshold, you can use the model for free. Just like build something cool, get to some kind of traction, and then we can discuss licensing. Once you're hitting $10 million revenue, let's discuss licensing. It can be a multi-year deal that's extremely predictable for you, so you can manage the cost, etc. And to me, it's obviously why the big guys don't want to do it, because they just like this model is like way less lucrative economically than to creating a toll road. But our claim is that toll road isn't going to be viable alternative, because if you're offering a different business model that's more of the win-win, more people are going.
This morning, Semi-Analysis published a paper, published email calling Anthropic probably a $6 trillion company pretty soon, and announcing that they had hit $1 billion net profit in the last quarter. So it's actually cleared like kind of their wonky internal like model training adjusted like number, cleared the earnings before interest, tax, depreciation, amortization, cleared net profit. So full cash flow plus profit, right?
I mean, the fact that they're already making money is pretty incredible.
Unless you have did I just heard China has banned a bunch of companies from doing AI companion. So they're going to have much stronger restrictions. You can have AI companions but for younger people, they're banning, and they're like, you can't make them too attractive. You can't have like dating life. You can't have like love life. Like a bunch of like very specific. You know how they are. They're gonna stamp out. They're gonna control the app stores. So one of the big verticals, and Chinese companies have made a lot of money on this. There's a lot of money on like dating and romantic, AI chatbots and.
Cool. I've got 3 hot off the presses music videos made just for today's conversation with Zeev, the CEO, and hopefully I'm saying his name right. I'm always very nervous about that. CEO of Lightrix and LTX, company that makes music gen models, including one that takes audio in. And so, in his honor, we've got a couple of these queued up. I want to play one actually kind of for him as we lead into the conversation with him as well. But here is, I think this should work. Tell me if you can hear it. Okay.
It's
You see some artifacts in there still, but it's come a long way, that's for sure.
it's come a long way. I mean, you have audio, you got video, you have authentic, semi-authentic looking Rastafari. You got the jaw in
Yeah.
there. I love the jaw throw in.
Honestly, my value add is really mostly in finding the right genre to match the episode. That is where sometimes Claude does a good job, but other times it just, I gave it some defaults of like, genres that I like. And it's maybe a little too reliant on those defaults, and everything else is basically fully automated. And you do feel the taste of Fable very clearly relative to Opus on some of these videos. The video that Opus created for various songs that I tried was kind of a little too literal, a little too on the nose, in some cases like kind of cringe worthy because it was so on the nose with the subject matter. in the case of the Disempowerment Blues, it made a video that included scenes of people picking cotton out of cotton fields.
Oh.
And I was like, yeah, I don't think this is quite the way we want to put this out into the world. And when I switched models and put Opus on the case, I said, you can check out put Fable on the case. I said, you can check out what Opus did in previous generations, but notice that it is kind of cringe because it's, the cotton fields thing is just like not going to play well. And it totally got it. So, goes back and does a totally different thing. And you can definitely feel the taste factor is notably higher. But I've had a lot of fun doing this, and the LTX model that takes in the sound as an input, it's the video that we just watched there was, and all the ones we'll show today, is a mix of Google's Omni and this LTX audio prompted model. And it kind of allows for that sort of classic music video dual track where you've got like a story playing out, but then interwoven with that, you just have scenes of the performers, doing the music. Excuse me. And the LTX was critical to that. I didn't have a way to get somebody actually singing the song without that. But I thought Fable was able to kind of parse it up and send shots to different models pretty effectively. And
it has come a long way. And I go back to that the video of the Jeff Bridges in the interview in the pod. So everyone in Nashville is using Suno. They are actually playing around with these things and using them. And so I suspect by next year there will be a 70% to 90% AI written song, which goes. And even if it's not like 100% AI written, like it's become an input into the creative process. And I think and it's also kind of converging on some other trends. For example, the breakout hit of the last 12 to 18 months, if you're in the teeny bopper crowd, is K-pop Demon Hunters. And K-pop Demon Hunters is basically slopified because they went ahead with the cartoon, the anime first, and the anime required music because it was about K-pop. And then they went and they wrote the music first, and then they went and they found performers after that to perform the music. So not all of the music is performed by the same performers. And then they went ahead with the Netflix series. The performers didn't get paid that much. They were just making soundtrack, basically. And K-pop Demon Hunters became absolutely enormous. For some reason, Sony originated the production, and Sony sold all the rights to Netflix. So now Netflix has on its hand, one of the key media properties for this age group, which is gonna go all the way, because number one, it's anime, so you don't get characters aging out. Number two, you've captured this group of core kind of like 8 to 12, 14-year-olds when they're very young. So they're gonna progress. The age group is gonna progress older, and so you're gonna own this property as they get older and as they have more money to spend. So and Netflix is kind of like doesn't know what to do with it, because Netflix's normal strategy is, you sign people for 3-season deals. You do the first season. If it works out, you continue for another 2 more seasons, and then you cut. Because at that point, when the 3 seasons are up, the actors negotiate for higher pricing. And most of Netflix shows, that doesn't make sense. So they let go. In K-pop Demon Hunters case, they had only negotiated for that one thing. So, and they hadn't even engaged with the artists at all, right? The artists were just kind of shoved in there as part of the soundtrack. So Netflix had to go and engage with the writers and the artists who perform, even though the artists weren't the ones who wrote it, and the artists were kind of like nameless almost. And now they have they have a concert tour coming up. It's going to be $1 billion concert tour for sure. Massive merchandising. Cartoon merchandising is excellent. You can merchandise in so many different ways. I don't even know if Netflix knows how to run the property, because it's more like a Disney style property. Maybe they should just sell it to Disney, honestly. But it's kind of slop that became not non-slop, right? It's slopified, kind of like we just need something to fill the time, and it became non-slop. So it's pretty cool.
I'll have to check it out. I have not seen 1 second of what's it called? K-pop Demon Hunters?
K-pop Demon Hunters. It is all the rage if you have a 8 to 12-year-old girl in your house. I mean, it's also K-pop. It's literally K-pop, which and the entire, but it's all English. No real, no Korean at all. It's all English. Yeah, it's pretty impressive in terms of culturally how much K-pop is penetrated into the American zeitgeist, so to speak. So,
well, coming up, I've got a K-pop music video for you as well. We can maybe lead into our first and only guest session today with that. What's on your mind today from the latest AI news?
Q is live.
Q, can you do a web search for the latest AI news and give us a short briefing?
Let me check what's breaking and pull together a quick brief. Top line, compute and governance are the big themes. OpenAI and Broadcom announced a new inference-focused chip called Jalapeno, tied to very large data center build-out. HP also announced a strategic partnership to use OpenAI systems across operations and software work. Anthropic said it is restoring access to certain models after export controls were lifted. On policy, a UN-backed AI for Good commission is launching, with its first meeting scheduled for today. Microsoft highlighted progress on quantum hardware and its Discovery agentic system. And Google has been rolling out steady updates across its AI stack heading into July.
What's the deal with Gemini 3.5 Pro? I was under the impression that should be launched at this point. Is there an update as to what's going on with that?
Let me check the latest on that and sort out what's actually confirmed. Short answer, it doesn't appear to be publicly launched yet. Google's own June update said they were hard at work on Gemini 3.5 Pro, already using it internally, with a rollout planned next month from that post. What is available is Gemini 3.5 Flash and other Gemini updates, but not a generally available 3.5 Pro. If you like, I can scan for any mention of early access, workspace rollout notes, or credible reporting that suggests timing has shifted.
Thank you, Q. And so we have, I did a bunch of additional updates yesterday and, fixes. And I think these things are fairly capable now. I think actually that you could presumably like use it as a full-time co-host, which is quite amazing.
Q, can you stay on with us, but only respond when we either ask you a specific question or when there's just a golden opportunity to to add value, but don't feel the need to respond every turn?
Understood, Nathan. I'll stay on and keep quiet unless you call on me directly or there's a truly exceptional moment to add value. I'll aim for concise, high signal contributions and otherwise remain in the background.
All right, cool. Let's see how it goes.
So the big news yesterday, I think, was GPT 5.6 was finally cleared for launch by Commerce. And Sam, I think the news broke sometime around, I don't know, 6 or 7 p.m. Pacific time. A couple of hours later, Sam Altman goes, tweets like it's going to be available on Thursday. So we have a confirmed Thursday launch. And then the next thing that happened is a bunch of influencers online began posting that one of my favorite guys, Theo GG, has said that it's his favorite model and he's been using it for months. It is not as good as Fable, but it is very agentic. It will take a task and it will chase it down to the ends of the earth. It's very good at organizing sub-agents. That's what they say. So it's very sub-agent friendly. And people have said that, the other person whose taste I trust is Dax. Dax runs OpenCode. Dax says their token consumption went up 5x. It is just such a fun model to use, he says. I think, and also the other thing to note is that GPT 5.6 is supposed to be much faster. And this is something that I think people don't have a good sense of yet. I definitely feel like fast responses make me more engaged. It's more engaging. And so I think the speed issue is going to be there. One of the complaints that has been going back and forth kind of between OpenAI and Anthropic is that Anthropic puts out these models, and they're very capable, but they don't tell you how much compute they're using. And Noam Brown from OpenAI has been complaining about this because he's saying, like, look, you guys are beating the benchmark, sure, but you're not showing how much compute it's taking. And it's really that, you don't understand which model is better because you're just seeing, we can do, he's like, look, we can do two things to improve it. We can just run it longer, or we can run in parallel and then we can average the best answer. And so he says, like, look, it's not fair because we all have these different, and it's also hard because you don't know how big the models are, right? Like how big the model is also a measure of compute. So this is one of his complaints.
Well, I mean, you could put the cost on the x-axis. That's the big trend, certainly. That's like a partial solution. I mean, I've seen him say in a couple different venues that like we literally don't know if today's models top out because this is like a very, another one of these really weird realities that we're entering into. The iteration time from model to model is now potentially shorter than the time horizon that it would take a model to top out in terms of, the absolute best performance on a super hard, ambitious, long running task. So he's like, you might need to give these things a month or a couple months, or, what happens if you spend $1 million with one of these models? So I had even heard him kind of propose something along the lines of like like a clawback or sort of a recall, model recall program almost, where, and obviously this doesn't work in open source, but it can work in a API paradigm, where a model might get released, day N after it's kind of been deemed to be ready. That gives you N days head start to be running models on really long time horizon tests. And potentially you need to be ready as a frontier company to see at, day N plus 30 or whatever, that like, actually we're now starting to see some problems when we get these things into the super long running regime. And so we either need to recall and fix, or we need to, which would mean taking things offline, which obviously is going to be kind of painful, but it's either that or have like a longer delay to launch, or just fly blind. And I think that's quite interesting. I've seen mostly pretty effusive praise for 5.6, but it's always, again, very good reminder that these things are quite confusing, where you do get people. Pietro Schirano too is another one, and again, I hope I'm saying his name correctly.
Yeah.
It might be Schirano. He is, a top tier user, I would say, and has done really impressive stuff in the design space using language models to create sort of a next gen Figma. But in general, it's just like tons of great little demos, and his GitHub is one to follow for sure. And his 5.6 review was, without exaggeration, I can say it's my favorite model. I don't know. Do you have any theories? It's probably too early to have any theories until we get our hands on it substantially ourselves. But I'm always kind of like, what's going on there, right? Why is it some people's favorite, other people still see Fable as like clearly better? I think that's going to be me, but I'm not really sure why. And I don't know if it's like a matter of cognitive style or how organized people are. One thing I have noticed a little bit is I think people that are more organized, more like better managers, better delegators, better at like defining standard operating procedure, tend to be happier with non-Claude models. Whereas people who are a little more like me and are kind of like vibing their way through life in a not so structured way seem to kind of more toward Claude.
So there's a couple of things that occur to me. Number one is that the people who prefer, a lot of the people who are preferring GPT 5.6 are very good coders. They're some of the best coders that we see online in the space. And I suspect a couple of things, and they were also in the early release batch. So I suspect a couple of things. Number one, the people are more organized in the sense that they know how to organize their code a little bit better, right? They are, this is the architecture. These are the system requirements. I want you to use test-driven development. I want you to do this and this and this. I want you to do a review afterwards, and I want you to come back to me. Like those people who are able to organize their work a little bit better. If you give the marching orders to, I think, GPT. The second thing is, I think there is a little bit of enterprise sales going on, in the sense that when the OpenAI team is releasing to the early adopters, they are actually listening to feedback and fixing things quickly. And I think that kind of responsiveness matters a lot for enterprise users and for the early adopters. Like it's really, really not pleasant to not be able to get in touch with anyone from the firm and have them not care, especially when you are an early adopter and you're pushing all of this feedback in, and you are actually using things on the edge, on the frontier, and you're actually helping the team explore what their model can do, right? One of the problems that you have right now is, as you pointed out again, that there's not enough time to actually explore the full depth of the model before the next release. So I think those two things are there. I think Anthropic has, as a result of, number one, their talent density framework, where they don't hire that many people, and number two, as a consequence of feeling that The model should be the product. The model should do the marketing. The model on its own should be good enough for people to get pulled in. And, to be honest, having succeeded at
It's working for them.
working for them, right? So from using that kind of framework, they've kind of gotten themselves into, we have to make the product, we have to make the model better. If the model is better, everything else will get sorted out, right? So yeah, it's just a different way of like living in the world. I would say that I think the Anthropic method is a little bit misaligned to humanity, because it means that you're not listening to the people who actually have opinions, and you're not respecting those opinions or resolving them as quickly as possible. It's more of a father knows best kind of framework, where we think this is the way it should be, and you guys are going to have to, if you like it, you can come with this or not. Too bad. So it is what it is.
A couple other things that jumped out to me that I don't know that we can do justice to, but I would at least point people to check them out. Lillian Weng, who's at Thinking Machines now, I believe, right? Former OpenAI, now co-founder of Thinking Machines, posted a very well-received blog post on harness engineering for self-improvement. And there's also one from Michele Catasta, who's the AI lead at Replit, Continual Learning for Agents. And they're both really, kind of sign of current times, I think, in the sense that we've been talking about, recursive self-improvement, and it is now happening where it's not just Anthropic people saying that it's starting, but you're starting to see these, I guess you'd call Thinking Machines a NeoLab probably. And in the case of Replit, I don't even know what to call Replit at this point, an agentic coding platform. But these different kinds of companies that have been aggressive early adopters are starting to raise their hands and say, we've closed the loop too. Yeah. And that's how we're progressing so fast. That was the Amjad from Replit basically just said, like, people have been asking us, how is Replit improving so quickly lately? And the answer is, we've closed the loop. The agent is now improving itself, and here's how. I definitely want to spend more time with those, and I think we should, try to make sure we're getting into the weeds and kind of pulling out some gems on exactly what people are doing. But I haven't had time to do that quite to the level that I would like yet. But it is, even without having dug into that level, I still think it's worth calling out that we're seeing more companies putting their stake in the ground on having achieved some form of recursive self-improvement. And
I think one of the things so I think Lillian Wang is Lillian Weng, spelled Weng, on X. Let's see if Q can pull up the X search on X and give us a brief kind of summary of what Lillian Weng is thinking about.
And Q, for what it's worth, it's also on her GitHub, if you need to search there, if X is not accessible.
So let's see if Q can come back to us with the results.
I'll pull up what she's been sharing recently and give you the highlights. I'm not seeing much from X right now, so I'll check another source. Short version, she's arguing the action is increasingly in the harness around the model, not just the model itself. That means workflow loops like plan, execute, test, refine, plus tool use, permissions, persistent memory, and splitting work across sub-agents and back-end jobs. She also talks about self-improving harnesses, where the agent improves the system that runs it, but that only works well if the underlying model is strong enough. The takeaway is that the next big gains may come from engineering the surrounding software system as much as from model improvements. Source, Lillian Wang's blog post.
Thank you, Q. Nathan, you seem to be muted.
Classic background noise here. Any deep cut highlights that you would say are kind of the surprising but notable takeaways that you would just highlight for people as like, we're in this every day, so we're familiar with the basic stuff. But what jumps out to you as like the deep cut hidden gem that I should be paying attention to that I might not have already noticed?
Let me pick out a couple of less obvious threads that are worth watching. 2 deep cuts, Nathan. First, the harness idea is bigger than it sounds. The winning edge may come from workflow engineering, persistent memory, and evaluation loops, not just model weights. Second, several teams are quietly closing the loop so agents improve their own systems. That's a meaningful step toward practical recursive self-improvement. And third, compute transparency and cost per quality still lag, which makes comparisons and benchmarking trickier than they look.
Cool. Well, do we have a guest in the waiting room or not yet? And here comes a little cape.
So it's interesting. I think your mute, when you muted, the sound basically came through on the production studio. The sound is always going on in the live stream, but when you muted, the sound started coming through the production studio. So let me introduce our next guest, our guest for this morning. Our guest for this morning is Zeev Farbman, the CEO and co-founder of LTX. Zeev has an extensive background in computational photography, having completed his PhD in computer science at the Hebrew University of Jerusalem before co-founding Lightricks in 2013. You likely know Lightricks as the engine behind wildly popular creative tools like Facetune and VideoLeap, which drove the company to a $1.8 billion valuation. However, recognizing that generative AI was fundamentally cannibalizing traditional software, Zeev recently pivoted his company to the absolute frontier of machine learning. Under the new LTX banner, Zeev's team recently released LTX 2.3, a massive 22 billion parameter open weights model that generates high-resolution video and fully synchronized audio in a single pass. While competitors like OpenAI and Google lock their video models behind expensive APIs and cloud interfaces, Zeev argues that the future of AI belongs to open, composable models that creators can run locally and fine-tune securely on their own hardware. Beyond creative media, he's also a founding member of NVIDIA's new Cosmos Coalition, pushing beyond just video generation to build open world models designed to teach physical AI and robotics how to interact with the real world. He joins us today to discuss the collapse of closed software monopolies, the bleeding edge of multimodal AI, and what happens when artificial intelligence finally learns the laws of physics. Zeev, welcome to the show.
Great to be here, guys. Nice to meet
you. Zeev, just give us a brief introduction to what LTX has been doing for the last 3 months. What has taken?
Okay, wow, that's a big question because we released LTX 2.3 like roughly a quarter ago, and in AI years, it feels like, I don't know, like a decade. Okay, so a bunch of things. I think there's like a growing realization that what started as video models is becoming a backbone of what we call now like world models. And I think like the best way to explain why this is so powerful is to use the analogy to LLMs, right? Like in the end of the day, at their core, LLMs are still predicting the next stock in the next word. And when we do the pre-training at the scale of the internet, it allows us to create models that do textual reasoning incredibly well. And the emerging world models, they're kind of doing the same, right? Like giving some kind of boundary conditions, some kind of history, some kind of constraints. They predict the next moment, okay? And the moment includes how the world appears, how it like sounds, and what kind of action we can do. I think the action part is the most maybe surprising one. And like roughly, I would say like a quarter ago, maybe a bit more, NVIDIA showed in their Dream Zero paper that it's fairly easy to add to video tokens some kind of encoding of the joints of the robot, and then basically completely ditch the VLA paradigm that was reigning supreme before it. So I think that's like one of the big surprises. And for us, realizing that was like this big moment that validated something that we always strive for, is to create an extremely efficient models, because I think once you start to realize that a robot will need to create like this simulation 30 times a second, you just like realize the amount of tokens that is going to be burned for these simulations. So I think that was like one of the maybe exciting validations of the overall thesis. In terms of architecture, like a bunch of things that we can, I don't know, discuss in depth. We're planning to release soon our mixture of expert architecture besides the dense models that we're already releasing. I think we finally were able to crack a variable tokens architecture. It's also exciting and kind of teaches the model to ingest more tokens where, let's say, the physics is challenging or like something necessitates to create more tokens. So anyhow, a ton of things are going on. We're gearing towards the release of our next model really soon. So yeah, busy.
One big question I have on world models versus creativity tools, and I've been having a lot of fun. I don't know if you caught a little bit of the video that we played just before you came on, but that is a mix of different video gen models orchestrated by Claude to make a music video for songs that I'm creating with Sudo. So that's how deep down the rabbit hole I've gotten. But I'm a little confused on world models versus creativity tools, in the sense that creativity tools very often, and certainly in my music videos, it's often the case that they're doing fantastical things that are outside of physics. And it strikes me that like when I create these sort of, impossible scenes, I am doing something that is operating in a, imaginary, counterfactual, whatever, again, violating the laws of physics sort of way. And I wonder how you think about balancing those, or if you think that will lead us to like a fork in video gen models, where some are the grounded physics, perfect for simulation, and others are kind of, to get your imagination on.
Yeah, it's like it is a great question, and I think it's a kind of no-brainer to realize that if we're blending a ton of animation data during pre-training, it's not a great example of how the real-world physics behaves like. So I think like the jury is still out. What's the best thing to do in pre-training versus how you're like doing post-training after in these cases, right? I think in the case of LLMs, and again, like obviously I have no idea what closed labs are doing, but at least by judging what like open guys are doing, I think it's kind of clear that like first during pre-training you want to throw as much as you can, right? And obviously like with LLMs, you're not becoming like this sophisticated coding model by looking at Reddit conversations, but you do capture something about the nature of the grammar, et cetera, et cetera. So I think at the moment, like with like world models, we're kind of trying the same thing, right? Like pre-training, you're throwing as much as you can, and then during post-training stages, you're trying to do SFT and RL on specific domains, right? Kind of similar to how you're doing with LLMs. Maybe at some point people will realize that there's certain data that's harmful for pre-training like world models. I don't think we're there yet. It's like this week I saw like a really cool paper that showed how given like a specific scenario, right, like that you encode with prompts that like data samples that correlate well with what's considered like a positive outcome for this specific sample, or what doesn't correlate well. So once you have that, yeah, you have like some kind of mechanism where you can say, okay, I kind of did the whole thing. Now I start to see what was actually harmful for the scenarios that I care about, and then maybe you can clean the pre-training data. But I kind of feel that that's in the future. I think at the moment that paradigm is not that dissimilar from LLM. Just like throw everything you can during pre-training and then start do like post-training in order to narrow it down to a specific domain task.
Do you think where is the bottleneck that you see? Is there a compute bottleneck? Is there a data bottleneck? Is there kind of like a model design window bottleneck where you have to squeeze the model into latency and compute budget for inference that you need to focus on? Like, what are the major constraints that you have to face?
Well, it's like our constraint is obviously compute. We're like a company that funded the development of the model using profits from mobile content creation apps. So like we definitely have compute constraints unlike the big guys. But if if we kind of zoom out a little bit and assume that we have more compute capacity, etc. And again, I will draw an analogy to LLMs, right? Like I think we some point realized there that just increasing the size of the model, like a pure dense model, has its limits, right? So we need to come up with something else. Same way that these guys had a lot of successes with all kind of mixture of expert architecture. We're seeing the same thing with diffusion models, world models as well. I actually don't have a good answer at the moment, like to what degree we are data limited just. In order to answer that, we'll have just like to pre-train our mixture of experts a little bit more and try to figure out like where the limit actually is. And as to efficient inference, like listen, it really depends on the use cases, right? Like so, let's think about a bunch of them. If you are let's say you want to create like a real-time avatars or like virtual environments, then okay, you can take like a huge model, you can do like a weight distillation to a way kind of smaller architecture in terms of a parameter count, right? You can then there like distill it to, I don't know, 2 to 4 steps. And we're already at the point where for a lot of these use cases, we're like at the latency like way below a second, right? So I think we are hitting a point where these things are becoming production ready for some use cases. But for real-time use cases, I think like avatars are extremely easy. We're going to see like a ton of avatars soon that are going to be like, I don't know, like virtual teachers and virtual customer support professionals, etc. To create an actual gaming environments, we still have a problem of having enough tokens for world consistency, right? So think about like Genie 3 and similar models, right? You typically create some kind of autoregressive model that has a lot of tokens that you already generated as your in your kind of context window, and that blows up pretty quickly, right? So we're having some models that have like, I don't know, 30 seconds, like 60 seconds. It's still not enough to have an actual game. And if you think about that, the kind of brute force compression methods that we're using so far, where, for example, just like subsample tokens, they're like not really robust, right? Like just like imagine a scenario when you start to generate some kind of environment, like my room, for example, and then I open a drawer and there's like a small coin there, right? You kind of expect that now when you get out of the room and you come back and you open the same drawer, you're still gonna see the same coin, right, at the same place. But like this coin, it's just like this like tiny token that was generated, and to creating a system that knows how to compress like the whole context in a way that's still going to preserve like these critical details, well, we don't have it yet, right? So although like we do have like real-time models that can do these things, the context is still missing there. Actual games in the next quarter or two. And in terms of robotics, a lot of the use cases around robotics actually do not require like a ton of context window, right? Like think about like robotic arms and the dexterity use cases. Then like the whole context is in front of you, right? You, let's say, want to, I don't know, figure out how the robot can create a sandwich. Well, everything is kind of in front of you, and then latency and autoregressive models, yeah, like this part we already have. So you're gonna start seeing demo of robotic arms doing things like fairly quickly in the next quarter or two. Like so far, if you're looking, a lot of these videos they actually kind of speed them up, right? So it looks like the robot is doing something cool with its arms, but it's like, okay, extend the speed. I think that's like mostly.
So how does this all translate into strategy for you? I mean, one of the things that I've heard, I guess two things. One is obviously there's this sort of to kind of use your habit of analogizing to LLMs. There's this sort of neo lab to frontier lab, big tech competitive dynamic, right? Where you're going up against, with video models at least, you're going up against Google, right? And I mean, they've got 25% of global compute in-house. The sort of summary of kind of rumors, I guess, that I've heard from the video gen space is that the models themselves really are expensive to run under the hood, and the margins are pretty slim across the board, which maybe makes sense of open sourcing models, because if you're not really able to make much on inference anyway, then maybe there's not so much cost to open sourcing. But it's kind of it strains the traditional finance brain to look at a business like yours and think, okay, we're going to put all of our profits into making this next generation thing, and then we're going to give it away. Like, what's the play for you to capture some of that value for yourselves?
Yeah, it's a great question. So there's like a lot to unpack there here. So just like a little bit of the background, the reason that we started to create our own foundational models, like this realization that what closed model providers are offering does not make sense for us economically, okay? We were at Lightchicks, we're a mobile creativity company. We really wanted to have AI models that are running, for example, on edge devices, and where you don't spend an inference computer at all. And at some point we realized that actually no one cares about creating models like that. And when we tried to see if we can work with closed model providers and serve it to our customer base, we just realized that it's completely prohibitive. And that's when we decided, okay, we're gonna create an extremely efficient architecture, and we can discuss like what's the bet there, but like most of it boils down to the fact that you're creating an extremely compressive latent space, so videos represented by small amount of tokens, and then you can add on top of it like a variable token rate. Long story short, if we're like kind of going to a closed source providers, I think again I'll draw analogy to LLMs. Let's see kind of what happens there, right? Like OpenAI and Anthropic are trying to justify basically $1 trillion valuation, right? And I think like the story is kind of simple. The tech is magical. It's hard to adopt it. So okay, if it's a magical tech, then we should put like a huge price tag on it. But when you're sometimes looking at the economical realities, it doesn't work out like that. There are like a ton of examples where the service is extremely valuable, but like very, very hard to monetize, right? Like I think sometimes when you're doing like a course in economics, like firefighters is a great example. Okay, people back in the day tried to have firefighters as private companies. It was like really hard to extract value like that, right? So at some point, okay, like the governments in most places the world decided to own it. So now like we have like this interesting story where I think it's kind of clear that Chinese companies, like DeepSeek, Moonshot, they're like really not that far behind in LLMs. But if you look at the valuations of these companies at their last round, we're talking about, I don't know, tens of billions, like maybe around like 50. No one is talking about $1 trillion, but like, wait a second, guys, it's like the same underlying tech. So what's going on? So I think it's, we sometimes internally calling like the CapEx trap. These guys spend like so much on the data center, so much in compute, like raise such a crazy amount of money and creating such an expectations that they just like really try to create a business model that's a toll road, right? Like that every time that you touch their model, you're paying them. And maybe it could work in the past, but giving the availability of Chinese model, I just like don't see how it's gonna unfold like that. So imagine that in the world of world models, we are providing an alternative to people who do not want a toll road business model. So we're coming and say, listen, guys, if you're not hitting $10 million threshold, you can use the model for free. Just like build something cool, get to some kind of traction, and then we can discuss licensing. Once you're hitting $10 million revenue, let's discuss licensing. It can be a multi-year deal that's extremely predictable for you, so you can manage the cost, etc. And to me, it's obviously why the big guys don't want to do it, because they just like this model is like way, way less lucrative economically than to creating a toll road. But our claim is that a toll road isn't going to be a viable alternative, because if you're offering a different business model that's more of the win-win, more and more people are going to switch there. And I think like GLM recently is a great example of that, right? Like once you start edging the capabilities of closed models, then a lot of people suddenly start to think about cost.
How do you see this play out with IP holders who, to some extent, are very scared of Google and what they might do with their IP? How does this work out for you?
It's obviously one of the kind of great business opportunities for us, because part of our pitch is that we're coming saying, listen, guys, we are giving you not only the pre-trained backbone, but also like the post-training infrastructure. And you can train it on your own IP on-prem. And the kind of people in the entertainment industry, animation, VFX, start to realize the importance of data. And imagine sometimes what happens is that they have like this multi-year like animation or VFX projects where coming up with something new, right? And the last thing they want is that before the completion of the project, someone already trained their model on like this new and unique style. So I kind of feel that for us, it's a huge opportunity. A lot of licensing deals that we did so far were around like data privacy, where people just like want to do the whole thing on-prem. Yeah, like people understand way better like how important data, especially new and unique data, is.
Can you maybe point to a couple of examples of people that have done interesting post-training on your open source foundation, and maybe speak a little bit, and I'm kind of curious about doing this myself, actually. I'm curious about what you can really drive with fine-tuning at like what scale, right? I mean, clearly one of the big, just fundamental facts of these video gen models is like with great scale, they get to kind of, higher and higher resolution, better intuitive physics, the sort of sixth finger and disappearing limbs, problems become much less frequent, if not, gone entirely. And I don't know where, obviously we don't know all the specs of the latest Omni and so on models, but it's like clear that they have scaled farther and have kind of, a little bit more sharp intuitive physics, right? I don't think that's too contentious. Tell me if you see that otherwise. But now if you give your model, which is like a little less, maybe significantly less scale and a little bit less in those dimensions to a company that has their own data, their own use case, and wants to do some fine tuning, in what ways can they close the gaps? Can they close the gaps? And in what ways can they sort of exceed what they can do with closed source models based on this fine tuning opportunity?
Just like in terms of parameter counts, like from like my understanding that the moment that the recent closed stuff that you saw and you're going to see is at the order of magnitude of like a couple of hundreds of billions of parameters, right? I didn't hear about like a world model that hit like a trillion parameters just yet. Maybe I don't think like the open source is going to be that behind. We're planning to release like MOE that's going to be also around like 100 to 200 billion parameters. So the gap, I think, is going to be on the scale of LLMs, right? Where you have, I don't know, like 2-3 quarters behind. But I think in the world models, if we're coming back to adaptations, the range there is kind of wider than with LLMs. I'll give you just like a bunch of examples, right? Of I think like the first things that are come to mind are like indeed like a VFX and animation on a specific IP. If you have like a specific franchise, but you have like a lot of data around it, let's say kind of a bunch of seasons, then fine tuning and like focusing all the capacity of the model on this specific IP is extremely beneficial. That works very well, almost to the point where for certain use cases, think about like keyframe animation, right? Like the animators still want to do the keyframes. That's a creative part that they actually don't want to outsource at all. But like so far in the P&L of animation, the in-betweening was like this crazy expensive part. I think like the models of the, I don't know, 10, 20, 30 billion parameters that are fine-tuned for a specific task are like good enough. And then it's actually a matter of costs. Like another example, let's talk about, I don't know, like a lot of marketing and advertisement use cases, right? Or for example, creating like UGC where you basically need like an avatars models, right?
Yeah.
That also like really doesn't require like a trillion parameters. At some point there, again, it's all about efficiency. If you want to have your personal teacher, some kind of avatar, etc., well, you don't want to pay Sedan's 4K prices in order to do that, and you're gonna require, I don't know, like hours a day of that. So I think like around a lot of use cases, once you start like doing to fine-tuning the specific domains, costs are becoming like very important, because again, you're like clear of the bar of quality, and then once you do that, it's all about cost. There are like some more unusual cases of fine-tuning that I saw. Like one example, think about like a field of computational photography, right? Where, for example, you're taking, I don't know, like a data from sensors and trying to implement algorithms like denoising, right? Like you want to take videos in low light conditions, but then to create a clean video. Or, for example, you want to create videos with higher dynamic range, right? Because like the sensor dynamic range is always limited, and then you're losing either some details in highlights or in shadows. Or, for example, let's say you're taking a stream from a camera and want to simulate how it looks like with a different focal length. So there are like a ton of these use cases that you don't associate with generative models, but actually kind of run like that. And some people address the problem exactly like that, right? They're taking like an existing data, and it could be, for example, a footage that was taken from two cameras that are like really close, but with different kind of focal length, and then do the adaptation, and the adaptation is done on top of the model. So again, that's like a very, like an unusual adaptation of the model, and like surprisingly, typically you don't need like a crazy amount of data for that. The more maybe like even more kind of surprising stuff that I saw is people who are adapting the models for doing all kinds of simulations that in the past required like a really expensive solvers, right? So think about like computational fluid dynamics, right? Where you're trying to understand how like the water or like the smoke or something is moving. As we surprisingly saw that people are adapting these models to that. They actually like solve the equation with precise solvers. Is like takes a ton of time, and then use it as an input to the model, and then the model can do a simulation like kind of fairly quickly. So again, like kind of circling back to the question of fine-tuning, I kind of feel that again the range is higher than LLMs. Sometimes you don't need like a ton of data to do the adaptations, and I think it's like stresses the point that why this model should be open, right? Like you do have a lot of different pockets of physical data. You want to make sure that the model like really excels at that.
Is your audio conditioned product an example of that kind of fine tuning? And could you maybe just talk a little bit in general about kind of conditioning on different modalities of data? I'm always really interested in these sort of cross modality bridges and the degree ultimately to which these latent spaces can be merged.
It's like initially with video models, people tried to bolt in audio kind of on top. Like after like experimenting with it for a while, we realized that it seems like audio, you better do it during pre-training. So at the moment in LTX, you have video tokens and audio tokens, and each one has like their own latent space, and obviously also have like a text encoder. So like a cross-attention mechanism that learns how to work like with these like free modalities. And what we're seeing now is that people who are like doing robotics need some kind of a streamlined mechanism to play with the new type of tokens, right? So for example, like when you're talking about like the positions of the like hands of a robot, some people just like kind of hack it and put in the video tokens like something that you can read back after rendering. Some people try to create like a completely new stream. Same with pressure, for example, of the fingers. So we realized at some point that part of what we should do as part of the post-training architecture is to give an easy way to define the new type of tokens, right? So people can come up with the different ideas and just like now discuss like some project where people are trying to define a token that's going to encode like the 3D structure of the object. So you have kind of like a vertex and how it moves over time, and like the final render. And this way you kind of try to capture like the structure of the object in a better way, right? So there are like no like these weird morphs and stuff like that. So yeah, like audio at the moment is like really native. You need to pre-train it a lot with the video in order, for example, to have a perfect lip sync. With other modalities, we're trying to create a mechanism that it's easy for builders to define, tokens of kind, and then try to train it on top of a pre-trained backbone and see where it gets them.
So you think it will be this sort of cross-attention? I mean, it certainly has the advantage of being more modular. So I can see how when you're kind of trying to put out a foundation and enable others, the ability to sort of bring your own modality and be kind of ready to do a good cross-attention makes sense because you've set them up for success. Do you think that will be the dominant paradigm, or when we see kind of at least from what we are told and what the demos seem to suggest from like the Omni concept, it seems like at a minimum we have like a deep integration of text and image or text and pixel latent space at this point. And I have this sort of suspicion that like, what would a super intelligence look like? My sense is that these things all have to be kind of more deeply merged than like arm's length tool calls or even cross attention, although that's more debatable. Where do you think maybe we'll get the highest performance, and where do you think most of the action will be? And those may be the same and they may be different.
It is a great question, and I'm going to give you two completely conflicting data points. Okay, so feel free to derive any kind of conclusion that you want. At some point, we realize, right, like typically when you're training, like when we're training, like these world models or like image models in the past, right, you would take some kind of text encoder, right? So people use like a clip and T5, and then gradually we realize, yeah, we need like way stronger understanding of the textual world as well when we are using this model. So we typically adopt some kind of VLLMs, right? And initially you just like would take off-the-shelf VLLM, right? It could be, Google's Gemma or one of the Qwen models or whatever. But what we realized over time, yeah, like it really makes sense to kind of unfreeze the VLLM and train it jointly with the world model, right? Because you kind of really want like the kind of text encoder, the LLM, to speak the same language, right? Like, so kind of everything ties together. So I think that actually goes nicely with your intuition that different modalities should start talking same language like really early on, right? It's like really hard. And it's another thing that the previous example that we saw with audio, that just like bolting audio on top of video is hard for like lip sync, etc. That said, there's like a paper from I think like one of the Apple research teams where they try to kind of compare, they called it like early fusion and late fusion, right? Like what happens when you start with the dedicated models, right? That like saw tokens on one type, and then you're like starting to fuse like really early between different modalities that are starting to do late. And their conclusion actually was that you can do a really good job with late fusion. So that's like a point for modularity. So where exactly it's going to land, I have to say initially I thought that late fusion is kind of might work. After what we saw with audio, after what we saw with unfreezing VLLMs during training, your intuition might be kind of correct.
How do you what is your process for assessing research bets that you have to make? Like, how far ahead do you have to think? When do you change course when you get surprised? Like, what is the process because I imagine you have to make these bets and you might get burned if you make the wrong bets. So,
it is a great question. So it's like I would say there are like really, really strategical bets and a lot of tactical bets, right? So around strategic bets for us, first of all, it was like necessity. We realized, which obviously we're not going to have like the scale of compute of the big guys. So we need to figure something out in order to get somewhere with the compute we got. So the first decision is like, again, extremely compressive latent space. Imagine that, right? Like the latent space, each token in the case of world models represents like some kind of a bunch of pixels, right? Like how a certain patch of pixels looks over time. And then you can make like this decision how big this patch is going to be. And if one token represents a really big patch, then you're losing a lot of information. So you somehow need to compensate for it. And we like really made this bet a long time ago that at some point we're going to figure out like this kind of token rates, meaning that you will able to start like with like this really cool core structure, and on the fly to add tokens to compensate for it. And I think like the best analogy for it is video. Think about like all the world models that you have at the moment, they all operate like kind of a constant bitrate compression video. You allocate the same amount of tokens for hard parts, for easy parts, and when you think about videos, it sounds kind of laughable, right? Like most of the video streaming algorithms, they have like a variable bitrate, right? Where according to how, like complex region is, you're allocating different amount of bits. So we place like this like really big bet, like compressive latent space, a variable token rate. It creates like a whole host of technical problems that people who are having less compressive latent spaces do not have, right? Like it creates like some diffusability problems, etc. But again, it was a constraint, like we had to do it, so we did it. I think we cracked a lot of technical problems there. I think LTX VAE is still the most compressive latent space that people actually use. NVIDIA now, when they presented their like a world model on top of SANA, they used our latent space. And that's again, like strategic constraints. They're coming and say, listen, I just like can't spend the same amount of compute as a big guy, so I need to figure out something algorithmically that's gonna give me some kind of edge. So that's like a strategic bets, necessity. In terms of like tactical bets, well, you're always kind of trying to figure out most reward from the least amount of effort, right? So for example, there are like a ton of cool inference time ideas, right, that do not require like training or kind of post-training. So you obviously prioritize that. There are like a ton of cool hacks that you can squeeze from that. And you are most careful around changing something in pre-training. That's like the most expensive part, right? So you are, before you're like touching pre-training, you're trying to show something on a small scale models, right? So you're constantly maintaining like models of different size. You're trying to show, okay, it works model of this size, okay, worked on the model of the bigger size. But I guess that also is like a part of the story of necessity. We just like can't be as cavalier with our computers, the big guys. So we need to, think more before we're placing these bets.
How close do you think we are to models working on mobile? I just spoke not long ago to Ramin, who you have probably crossed paths with at some point, the CEO of Liquid AI. And I was really struck. I mean, this is sort of an obvious fact, but it's also like good calibration that the global smartphone and laptop market is $800 billion a year and has been for a number of years. And so, we're only now crossing that level with the global data center build out, right? So it's like there's a lot of compute distributed in people's pockets. They have a pretty cool app, where I can get like a couple billion parameter model to run on my phone, and it runs at an acceptable speed. I'm not going to use it that much though, because it's just clearly not nearly as smart as the ones that I get out of the cloud. What do you think for the video and world model space is the trajectory? Like, do you see a limit for how much you could actually squeeze onto an edge device? Do you have a sense of what that limit is, and how fast do you think we get to the point where there's like viable use cases that literally run locally?
That's an excellent kind of question, and also like excellent observation. I think at the moment when people think about like this whole dynamics of like CapEx spend and where it goes, they sometimes don't ask like actually like this very justified question, right? Like what actually is possible to run on edge devices, because then it just changes the economics of the whole things. So before a full world model, let's kind of decouple modalities, right? So a lot of the audio related use cases can run on edge devices. Okay, so at the moment we're still living in the world where like some of it is going through APIs, and some people build like significant businesses out of it. That I think is going to be obsolete pretty soon. I like personally invested recently in some startup that like kind of showed me a demo of like really cool audio stuff that they're doing on the edge device. I think it's really coming. And I think like what's going to happen is that you're going to start having like these hybrid rendering models where you're putting some kind of orchestrator on the edge device that understand like the complexity of the problem, right? Like when you're looking, for example, I don't know, any like, again, let's go to the world of LLMs. It's kind of funny, right? When we're having all these benchmarks and we're listening about like Erdos problems like being solved, etc. But guys, 99% of the use cases of LLMs are not around Erdos problems, right? And we're like spending a lot of electricity around it. So I think there are going to be like these orchestrators that are going to understand what you actually need and going to try to address it on the edge device. And if not, then kind of go to the bigger model in the data center. Running like in real time, like world model on edge device, well, it's not going to happen in this generation of hardware. But I think like, again, notable exception, again, are like Macs. Like if you're, I know it's not an iPhone, okay, but if you're looking at M5 performance, like, listen, like I saw someone did like this crazy quantization of GLM, right? And running on his M5 MacBook Pro, okay, you need obviously like a ton of VRAM, probably like 512, something like that. But it's becoming plausible, and I don't think we squeezed everything that's possible, both in terms of optimization and quantization. And just like, to me, the fact that I can run like this stuff on my Mac, come on, it's unbelievable. It's like super cool. So I think, yeah, that's like one of the things that is being underpriced at the moment, how much of the compute will be able to move to edge devices. And once people are going to start having like these local routers that will understand the complexity of the problem and then do these decisions for you, I think there's going to be a moment of reckoning for, you know, Anthropic and OpenAI, that at the moment doing these decisions for you, but not in your favor, right? Like when you're asking them and then like deciding how much compute you're going to spend, well, you know, it benefits them, but not you.
Me.
Yeah, also can't hear you.
All right, come back. Okay, this is a gimmick, but it might be a cool gimmick. It might be a lame as well. Q, would you like to ask a question? Any blind
Q
spots
here,
that
standing
you
by
want
in
to?
the control room and ready when you are.
Yeah, ask a question based on what we've asked and what we might have missed.
Zeev, one area that often gets less airtime is failure modes in the creative pipeline. Where do you see the biggest gap between what your tools can reliably deliver today and what creators assume they'll get? And how are you testing against?
Okay, great question. Like the gap between what we basically promise and what we deliver. So listen, guys, I'm like, there are clearly still some gaps. I think like the major one is physics, right? Like we try to capture with a model that, I don't know, even if it's like 200 or 500 billion parameters, the entire physics of the universe, or at least separate universes we know, we are not there yet. But we're closing the gaps pretty quickly. Like I would say probably the most creators are still gonna point at the fact that the simulation isn't as correct as controllable as they want it to be, right? Like if you're talking to really creative people, they typically want to control like every nuance of the appearance, and that requires to somehow decompose the model to like a bunch of knobs, right? Like that you have like in the classical software, you can say, yeah, here I want to have more light, and here I want like the splash to be bigger. So achieving this controllability, yeah, so besides like the physics is also like one of the, I would say, open things, right? Like we're getting cool things, not necessarily the things that creators want exactly, and it is a pain point.
Good question. Thanks, Q.
Thanks, Q.
Anything else that you think is important that we haven't touched on? And I appreciate that you've stayed with us a little long. I don't want to take up your whole afternoon into evening here, but this has been a great conversation so far. And anything that you feel like we and Q have missed?
No, it's like a great question. I think like the edge compute angle is underpriced. People should kind of spend more time thinking about that. And listen, your intuition about like when is the right time during the training process to fuse modalities, that's like something that again, like for me personally, is a cool question. What was you spend a ton of time on that? So I have to say, frankly, we discussed like a ton of cool and important stuff.
Cool. Well, I love it. Thanks for joining us today on AI in the AM. And we'll definitely be watching your progress and continuing to make music videos with it. And, who knows what we might be able to do, especially if we dabble in a little fine tuning as well. The world's our oyster. And we appreciate the opportunity to hack on an open source model to make that the case.
It was a pleasure being here. Thank you very much, Nathan.
Appreciate it. Great to meet you. Bye for now.
Being here.
All right. In the interim, while Prakash hopefully comes back, I'm going to go ahead and play another music video made with a combination of Claude and Suno for the song and Omni for some of the scenes and LTX for the lip sync portion. Here we go. Hopefully we can hear this. And just quick context, I guess, in case this seems super weird. This was from the episode with Ramin Hassani, the CEO of Liquid AI. And this is inspired by the transcript of that conversation. All right, that's Liquid Intelligence, made by a whole host of AIs. Yeah, great conversation with Zeev. And I am really interested in potentially exploring what it would take to, for Waymark, which I am, only a part-time AI R&D advisor these days. We're trying to do commercial quality stuff with video gen models, and Q actually asked, you might not have heard this, but Q asked a good question. I gave Q the chance to ask a question, and its question was about the disconnect between what creators think they're going to get and what they actually get. And he answered in a way that really resonates with the Waymark experience, which is just like controllability is not quite to the level that the real creative minds demand or at least crave.
Mm-hmm.
And for somebody like me, who's just kind of on the fly throwing music videos together and get something cool out of it, if it delights me, then that's a win. But if you're trying to actually represent a small business in a commercial context, you kind of got to get it real and right. And the controllability there is still fairly hard. So I did come away from that conversation thinking like, I wonder what we could do if we got into fine tune, if we went like away from, not necessarily fully away, but if we, broadened our thinking to not just ask what is the best model, which has traditionally been the approach, and instead ask like, what is the best model we can potentially help create if we do a little fine tuning on top of something like LTX. That would be interesting to find out.
I think it strikes me that, Facebook has just done Muse Spark, which is their next generation image model. And one of the the next generation video model is coming out soon. One of the commentaries online is that Facebook is going to basically wire this to their to the likes and the viewing and like who likes what, and basically, and this is what we've expected from the beginning, dopamine wire, humanity to a model and have that model spit out things that cause dopamine and cause people to keep coming back to Facebook. So, and that is maybe a signal that no other firm has as much as Facebook. I mean, I think Facebook and TikTok, right? These are two. And I think the video gen is just the starting point for the dopamine gen, right? Like the video gen is kind of a prerequisite to the dopamine generator. But the dopamine generator is coming, right? And that's the ultimate goal. Ultimate goal is not a video gen. The ultimate goal is dopamine gen, right?
Yeah, mixed feelings on that, to put it mildly, but
everyone is scared of Meta, right? Like when Meta decides to go for it, because I think people in the industry kind of know what is possible, but what most researchers have not focused on, and having researchers focus on that, or having the best researchers focus on that, is something that is scary, I think. So, but people have been talking about it for a while, right? It's not exactly a new idea.
Yeah, well, we've seen a version of it, right? I mean, the sort of 4.0 sycophancy, the sycophantocalypse was, at least in part, driven by perhaps, naive would be probably harsh, but a less sophisticated than it needed to be use of the thumbs up, thumbs down signal in ChatGPT that fed back into post-training process, and obviously, created the sycophancy problem. So I've been generally, I thought that was a really interesting moment. It showed how much, we still don't know, and the fact that we can be surprised, and the fact that we can be surprised post-launch in such a meaningful way, where I guess you have to put it to a large extent to the differences between how people use models at OpenAI and how the rest of the world interacts with them. And they've presumably closed that blind spot significantly since then. But it was also quite telling that they did take it down. They're not, I think clearly OpenAI is interested in serving users, interested in serving customers, but they're not fully, committed, or they're not fully trapped in the sort of whatever the customer demands is right paradigm. You still go online, and in many spaces, you'll see people just complaining about 4.0. Like if you go into Sam Altman's comments, any given day, there's still people being like free 4.0. And, they kind of walked it back when they first took it down a little bit, but the highly sycophantic one, they just were like, okay, no, this is too much for us. We're not going to do it. Broadly, I've been kind of pleasantly surprised by how much resistance the frontier companies and the community as a whole have so far showed to a sort of wireheading, obvious wireheading opportunity. And I'm a little scared of it. Yeah, I think as you said, everybody's scared of Meta. You can count me in on that roster. It does seem like kind of inevitable, if only at the sort of community distributed level. But it seems like Meta may, bring it to us first. They've become the closest. We've seen these examples from them of like hot stepmom, as like a chat character. Like, what are you doing there, Meta? I don't know that we need hot stepmom on the roster of our AI avatars, but it could get pretty crazy with the scale that they have, the compute that they have. I mean, if they really try to optimize that way, watch out. It could get pretty gnarly pretty fast, I think.
Yeah, I think I saw yesterday Alex Weng. I think the first thing that they're using Muse Spark for is Instagram video fixes, so red eye reduction, like flash optimization and stuff like that, which is very fair, right? Instagram after all started off as a filter company.
Filters, yeah.
Yeah, so it is very fair that you basically help people to take better photos, essentially. So I think that's fair. I think that was the first thing he put out. The second thing he put out was ads, like ad creation with visual ad creation with this thing. So that started to be okay. Now I see where you're going. And then he also put out one where he was like, you can use multiple images in the same in the same composition, and chat with and reason about it. So one of the things he did was he put three people into an image, 3 photos into an image, and then he asked for a certain style, and he asked them to be doing something. So he ended up with 3 people sitting on a bench, anime style, talking about something. And I think Nikita Beer, who was a PM and who's PM at X right now, and was at Meta for a while, pointed out that one of the big bottlenecks to social in Instagram had been that you need to get people together in order to take these photos. If you want to get a nice photo in front of the pyramids, you got to go to the pyramids, right? And all of you got to go, right? And one of the problems was, hey, that's a bottleneck. And so I think this is the lifting of that bottleneck. We started to see it earlier. Like I'm almost like, why do people take selfies with celebrities anymore? Because it doesn't make sense anymore, right? Like autographs don't make sense. Those selfies don't make sense anymore because you can just fake them. And so people are still taking the selfies, but I'm like, it doesn't make sense anymore. And I think this is that, you cross the Rubicon kind of moment when the tech goes out to enough people and it's easy enough to use that, hey, this kind of taking photos with celebs maybe goes away. But it does mean that you can kind of hang out with your friends online and you don't have to be like ostracized by not going to the party because you don't have the photos of yourself at the party, and kind of insert yourself into those photos anytime, right? Meta might also be able to do something about ownership of identity, because they know more about visual facial identity and recognition than anyone else on earth. They have for like at least a decade now. And so they could probably do a little bit about, this is your image and you own it and your Insta, and no one else can use photos from your Insta as an input into theirs without you being a friend and like allowing it. So they could probably do a little bit of that too. And if they make it easy enough, it might become the default place. If it's easy enough, then you don't need to go for piracy. You don't need to go elsewhere and try to do these things. You can just do it on Meta platform, and if it's allowed, it's allowed. It's not allowed, it's too difficult to bother with. And that could actually be helpful in some sense. So
Sora had a pretty good model for that, I thought.
Yeah.
I mean, the way that they allowed you to control who could cameo you into videos.
Yeah.
I think that was a pretty good contribution to how pretty good precedent for them to set, even though obviously that app didn't maybe rise to their level of expectations, and or they needed the compute for other things. I do think that model made a lot of sense, and it was remarkable that they, in that case, didn't really have much downstream trouble. Like it seemed like they actually controlled what you could do and couldn't do it in a way that seemed, I don't know, it's almost like they pleased everyone there for a moment. Like I didn't hear people complaining that it was too restrictive very much at all, and I also didn't hear people complaining that they were their likeness was being abused, because they really had a pretty good own your own likeness paradigm. I thought that was pretty cool. One funny story that came to mind when you were talking about faking it. So I took this road trip with the kids not too long ago and stopped at a 1760s fort, part of the French and Indian War or whatever. My wife took a couple photos of the kids, and then she started using Gemini, Nano Banana in the Gemini app to dress the kids in period clothes in these photos. And they came out great. Like they turned my 5-year-old into a British regular. And it was like, damn, that's really good. Like it's, he still looks like him. It's super cute. It's, and then my upshot to her was, I don't think we need to buy the Christmas jammies anymore. We can just do it in post. We'll just take a picture, and then you can put whatever Christmas jammies you want.
I'm sure that went down well.
It goes to show. Yeah, I had understood that a lot of the value from the Christmas jammies was in the photos, but yeah, she did not like that idea. So I think the Christmas jammies will still be ordered this coming Christmas. Whatever we might be able to do with the photos after the fact is kind of beside the point, I guess, from her perspective.
Oh, hilarious.
Do you want to do you and me versus each other and versus FutureSearch in trying to make sense of, or trying to forecast what's going to happen on some AI questions?
Yeah. Let's have Q participates. Q, you're going to be participating with us in this contest.
Okay, I don't actually have a answer blank for Q, so I could probably.
We can just get
pretty
her
quick.
opinion.
We'll do this real quick. So here's the thing: we can just start kind of talking, and okay, there's that. Now let me go do a quick prompt on the. Gotta find out of my many tabs here. Which one do I need to be in?
All right, let me get my footing for a moment, and then I'll jump in. Standing by, quite ready. When you're set, give me the prompt and the scoring rules, and I'll keep my answers crisp, so we can focus on the comparison.
Nice. FutureSearch. Okay, cool. Session as is. Can you add a third player Q to the quiz? This should be fast enough for it to do. I should be able to refresh and we'll get Q in there in just a minute. But in the meantime, we can start with the conversation. So I think we did change the scoring a little bit since last time. Now you can see this points is 100 minus the square of guess minus market over 100. Whether that's the optimal scoring condition or not, I don't know. But there you have it. Let's get into it. Will Anthropic's valuation hit 1.7 trillion by December 31, 2026? We have to give a percentage guess that it will do that. And we have as a source the NPM price reported by the NASDAQ private market.
Okay, so by the end of this year, will it hit 1.7 trillion? And we have to give a percentage or a yes or no?
Yeah, it's a percentage yes, I believe.
Okay. So I would say it is 80% yes for me.
Wow. Okay, that's higher than I would have. That's higher than I would have said. Let me go first, Q, and then you can come in last. I don't want you to bias me.
Yeah.
Oh wait, did we lose the screen share? Can you still see it, or do we have to do this?
I can see the screen share. Yeah.
Okay, there we go.
So Q, go ahead. Like, what do you think? Will Anthropic's percentage? Anthropic hits 1.7 trillion valuation by end of this year, 2026.
All right, let me think this through for a moment and put a number on it. I put it at about 12%. That's a sky-high valuation, and while Anthropic is moving fast, getting to that level by 2026 would require exceptional revenue, capital, and market conditions all lining up. Not impossible, just very unlikely.
Okay, very well.
So that was 12%? Is that what Q said?
Yes.
Q, was that 12%?
12%.
Yeah.
Okay. I would have been high with you up until this whole Fable moment. That does make me wonder if there's some risk that, and also we've got these kind of, equity sharing proposals that are a little bit more live now than they were even just a few weeks ago. So I think if we'd done this even just a few weeks ago, I would have probably been up there in the 80% range. But today, I think I'm a little bit lower because of these other risks. So I'll maybe say 50%. So we've got quite the range covered here: 12, 50, and you said 80, right?
Yeah, 85.
Okay. In the meantime, this update to the game is almost there, but I'll let it finish. So we'll do 50 for me.
Yeah.
50 for me, 80 for you. And FutureSearch, which we talked to Dan, the CEO there, earlier this week. I did, basically as we discussed at that time, I just had Claude create an account, get the API key, and run these exact same questions through FutureSearch to get its take as well. Obviously, should we believe FutureSearch more or less than the market is like a very live question, but we can at least do the compare and contrast. Okay, here we go. Let's reveal the first one. Market says 45.5. FutureSearch says 37.
Mm-hmm. I feel I have like some privileged information. So basically, number one, Anthropic is already in its quiet period for pre-IPO. So they've done the IPO filing and they are in the quiet period. So they're not talking about a lot of stuff. That's number one. Number two, this morning, Semi-Analysis published a paper, published email calling Anthropic probably a $6 trillion company pretty soon, and announcing that they had hit $1 billion net profit in the last quarter. So it's actually cleared like, kind of their wonky internal like model training adjusted like, number, cleared the, earnings before interest, tax, depreciation, amortization, cleared net profit. So, full cash flow plus profit, right? So I think they are in that kind of period. And I'm pretty sure like the valuation is now basically doubled already. So that's my guess. We'll see.
Yeah, I mean, the fact that they're already making money is pretty incredible. Was there a revenue number? I was just thinking not long ago that like it's been a minute since we've heard the latest monthly revenue update. Do you think that's because of the quiet period?
Exactly. The leaks have stopped because of the quiet period. So the leaks were happening because they were doing roadshow and like talking to investors, and now they're in the quiet period. They're not talking to investors. So.
Gotcha. All right. Well, on to question number 2. This is from Kalshi. Will Anthropic officially announce an IPO before January 1, 2027? Resolves yes if they confirm an IPO before then, where confirmed means the SEC declares it its S1 form effective, the IPO is priced, or an exchange assigns it a ticker. Boy, I don't have a great sense of where that happens in the process relative to where it actually, when it actually happens.
Through and put
Yeah, go ahead, Q. You take the lead on this one.
I put it around 68%. If they're already in a quiet period, the mechanics suggest forward motion, but timing can slip with market conditions and regulatory stops.
I was at 60% probably.
Okay.
Got it. I'm at 68%. That's close enough that we're basically in the same camp. Likely, but not a sure thing. The path is open, but the calendar can still be tricky.
All right, Q. We will ask you for the opinion. So just stand by.
Yeah. I'll go a little lower again, just because again of these risks. But even as I type that, it feels a little. I'll go a little lower than you, but not too much lower. Let's see what we got. Market says 64. Yeah, we got to have a word here with Claude. I don't know if you just saw this, but it did kind of leak the answer a little bit. FutureSearch says 70.
Q is hooked up in the back end to GPT 5.5 for more difficult questions. So Q, did you refer to an external advisor or tool call for the last answer?
Let me clarify that briefly. No, that was my own estimate based on general reasoning about how IPO timelines usually unfold and the uncertainty around market conditions. I didn't use any external advisor or tools for it.
Okay, thank you, Q. So Q also has reasoning set up. So it's on reasoning high, and it's been told to reason through. So this is a much more intelligent model than what we had, just a day ago, right? So
that's cool. Excuse me. I should also say that FutureSearch, I did not control at all what kind of data sources it can use. So presumably when given these questions, it did look at the market and kind of anchored itself to the market, and then maybe also, found reason to depart from the current state of the market. Number 3, which company will complete the largest IPO of 2026 by market cap? So completes an IPO.
Yeah.
And achieves the highest market cap at the close of its first trading day.
And the options are what? SpaceX, Anthropic, OpenAI, and
Field. All right.
Yeah.
Let me think this through for a moment and pick a side.
And it's a percentage for each?
Yeah, percentage chance that each one of the 3 companies plus the field is the one that has the highest
Okay, and the
close on
field
its
meaning everyone
first
else.
day of IPO.
Okay, so the
I'd
choices
give
are
SpaceX about 45%. If it
Mhm.
actually IPOs, it's the heavyweight. Anthropic, maybe 25%. OpenAI, around 20%. And the field gets the remaining 10% for a surprise giant sneaking in. The uncertainty is mostly about whether SpaceX lists it all.
Yeah,
Q.
okay,
Can
you're
you
a little
check
out of date there,
online whether
Q.
SpaceX is listed?
Fair point. I should have said if it lists more carefully. If SpaceX is off the table, then I'd shift that weight mostly to the field and a bit to Anthropic. The big unknown here is not just who's strongest, but who actually chooses to go public.
Okay, thank you, Q.
Okay, yeah, this one's interesting. I mean, I'm gonna go like super low on the field. I don't see any other candidates really. SpaceX was what at the end of their first day, like 1.8, and then it popped up again a little bit more the next day over 2, and then it maybe dropped down a little bit.
I think you're right. Yeah,
Um,
agree with that. Yeah.
so Anthropic, we just covered. I gave it a 50% ish to IPO and basically a 50% ish to get over that level. So that gives me, by synthesis of the last 2 questions, I've got a 25 there. And then I've got a 25, maybe similar analysis on OpenAI, be a little lower for them. And then the remainder goes to SpaceX, leader in the clubhouse, not getting surpassed.
Okay, so for myself, I will pick 0 for the field. OpenAI, I will go with 10%. Anthropic, I will go with 30%. And
Let me think this through and put a clean split on it.
SpaceX, the rest, I guess. Yeah.
I'd go with 10.
Uh,
I'd go
Q,
with
only
10%
respond when
OpenAI,
you're
30%
addressed.
Anthropic, 50% SpaceX, and 10% for the field.
Okay, Q, only respond when you're addressed. So
All right, let's
Understood.
see.
Quite. I'll keep mum unless someone says Q and ask.
Whoa. So that's interesting. FutureSearch not giving much weight at all. FutureSearch called it SpaceX has already established a virtually insurmountable benchmark. I don't know about that, FutureSearch, but it is closer to the market than we are.
Well, Bayesian probability, right? Like it's already, SpaceX is already listed. So that clears a huge.
Yeah, the leader in the clubhouse effect is definitely real, but
So
96% seems quite high for FutureSearch there.
I think,
Yeah, I don't know. I have a hard time wrapping my head around that. Let's see the full agent rationale.
I'll stay
think-
quiet until someone
yeah.
calls on Q or Q directly.
Thank
All
you.
right,
Yes.
let me
Now we're
read-
getting into
restart
starting to feel
the-
like that TikTok feed.
The initial queue setup like resets. So we reset queue.
So first day closing market cap was approximately 2.1 according to FutureSearch. Which, yeah, I mean that's high, but I don't know. I wouldn't put these companies out of the woods yet. People are definitely going to want to buy a lot of Anthropic.
So Sam Altman just announced updated voice for ChatGPT, and this is going to be similar to I think what we're using right now. And my expectation has always been that the voice internet is going to be enormous, like absolutely enormous. So and I think it's going to tie in with the AI devices that we've been talking about for a while. So I think we're about to see consumer takeoff, and consumer takeoff is going to be Meta video gen, Meta like image and video gen, and AI devices, AI companions on voice. So I think we're about to see the because so far we've had enterprise takeoff, right? Enterprise takeoff has been in coding, but consumer takeoff, we had the Chat GPT bump, but we haven't had another bump yet. And I think they needed a few things. They needed an advertising model, and I think they started to evolve that advertising model, and I think they're almost there, right? And I think maybe what ended up happening was for OpenAI, they didn't want to do the dopamine route that they had with 4.0. And so they took a step back on the advertising and they tried to figure out what they could do. And I think they ended up with voice. So this is going to be interesting, because if voice works out, it's going to be enormous, like absolutely enormous. So
yeah, no doubt about that. All right, moving right along. From Kalshi, which AI company will have the best coding model at the end of 2026? And we basically have the same contestants. Notice that this is livebench.ai, contamination resistant. Okay. Well, I think, again, I'm going to go real low on the field. At this point, I think we have to go fairly low on Google. And the rest, I think I maybe give... I think you got to put the bulk of the weight on Anthropic, OpenAI, and XAI. I wouldn't count out XAI. You know, they're a dark horse, but they're dangerous. Maybe move this. I think I'm going to go to 60 for Anthropic, and we'll pull that out of OpenAI and the others like so. All right, what do you think?
I would say Anthropic 60, OpenAI 30, and then XAI maybe like 5%, Google maybe like 3%, and 2% for the field for the best coding model.
Market and FutureSearch say, oh, we are right on with the market.
Right on, 60% Anthropic.
Again, this field thing, I feel, has this is a fairly well documented phenomenon in prediction markets generally, where like somehow the field always gets a little more weight than it seems like it should. FutureSearch, I'm again not really sure what to make of that.
It's
not a crazy number other than the field.
The field often gets a bit of a premium because it captures unknown entrants and surprise performance, not just today's leaderboard. It's a hedge against overconfidence in any one lab. As for FutureSearch, I treat it as a useful signal, but only one input, especially if the rationale isn't fully transparent.
Very well, Q. Thank you.
Glad to
No, in terms of the FutureSearch rationale. Okay, well, yeah, FutureSearch has a compelling point here. If OpenAI is the incumbent on this metric as of early July 2026, it has the top 2 positions with 5.2 Codex and 5.5 Thinking X High. Then, that's fairly compelling compared to just my broad intuition. Although, again, we're a lot closer to the market than FutureSearch is. But I can see the argument for, if they're currently number 1, maybe they stay number 1. That's not a crazy idea by any means. All right, let's keep going. Will an AI model score greater than 90% on frontier math before 2027? I feel like this almost just happened, didn't it?
Before end of 2027 or before?
Oh, before 2027. Before 2027. So by December 31st this year. But I feel like that's pretty high. Because I feel like it almost already happened. It might be like slightly.
Didn't frontier math have to be revised because a lot of the questions had like errors or something?
Yeah, there was a revision up. The scores got better.
Yeah.
As a result of that revision. And yeah, even on tier 4, and this doesn't specifically say tier 4, there was like it was in the 80s. So I have to say, I think this is like a 95% chance based on everything I know. It seems like it's almost already happened. I maybe could go even a little higher, but I don't think it's quite literally happened. And, whatever, there's a little bit of weirdness. Maybe I'll go up to 97.
So 90%, I would say maybe, I don't know, 75%. I feel like in order to get to 90%, they'd have to revise a lot of the problems. They say they have issues with 1/3 of the problems. So about 33% of the problems have issues with them. So they had to revise fatal errors in about 1/3 of problems.
It's wild. I would score absolute 0 on that. So You talked me down 2 points, but I'm still keeping it at 95 because I think if memory serves, we're already well into the 80s, and there could be some rules lawyering stuff here around exactly what data set or whatever, but my sense is we're already like very much on the doorstep of that. So let's see. Market says 88. FutureSearch says 78. I don't know if there's too much more to say there. I'll just look at the rationale for a second. What was the most recent? Yeah, GPT-5.5, 87.7 on tiers 1 through 3, and Fable 87 on 1 through 3 and 88 on tier 4. That is what I was remembering. So yeah, if anything, I feel like I'm probably a little low. And that would mean obviously everybody else is even lower. But I don't know. If you're at 88 on tier 4 today with a model that was done training in February or whatever, I don't see how you don't get to 90%. This one, I think we may have a leak. We have to talk to Fable again about not leaking the answers. No peeking at the leak. Will any model reach a 1560 coding arena score by December 31, 2026? This is a tough one because I don't know what the current top score is, and it's a little bit hard to know what these scores mean in isolation, like relative to, without actually looking at the leaderboard to get a sense. I think this is a tough question. Maybe we skip this one. We also kind of have a leak here. It says LM Arena resolved. I think when it's resolved already, that probably means it happened. I don't think it means it definitely isn't going to happen. So we'll put us both down for 99%. What do you say? We'll tie on this one. What? Market says 46. I'm confused now. Well, let's look at the thing real quick and see. What are we looking at?
Let me check for a moment so we can line it up clearly. Resolved usually means the entry has been finalized and linked to a specific model, not that the question itself is already settled. So a 46 from the market can still be perfectly sensible if the leaderboard is confirmed, but the target hasn't been reached. In other words, resolved is about the status of the entry, not a hint about whether the future event happened.
I see. Well, I'm misreading my own game, I guess. It's interesting that they've got 4.6 in the top spot. Every time we end up opening Arena, I'm a little bit like, what is going on here? Like you've got Fable worse than, I don't know. Something feels
this is the thing, right? Like internally, the companies are not using these models, using these benchmarks, except, just as kind of a taste test, but they're really building around other metrics internally, right? Like, so, and they are dogfooding their own stuff. So it's clear that they are high taste coders. So
yeah, something weird about this. I have to say I'm not too compelled. But okay, onward we march. Number 7, will the U.S. enact a federal AI safety law before 2027? Resolves yes, only if a bill is signed into federal law. And it would have to contain at least one of a prohibition on creating or releasing specific AI systems, training restrictions, usage restrictions, or human-in-the-loop requirements. Executive orders, state laws do not count.
I would say that's like a 10% maybe.
Yeah, I was kind of in the same zone.
I don't see the Trump administration wanting to, and I don't see them able to get consensus on a bill anyway. So
yeah, and we've got midterms, and then we're gonna have a little lame duck period. There's a lot of reasons I think it's gonna be pretty tough. 10 feels like intuitively high, but also, this is where I think it's kind of the same argument from the field that like definitely we should be prepared for some surprises. So it's only it's 10 in my mind because there's some chance for surprises, some incident, some kind of vibe shift moment that could really change things. But barring that, I think it's quite a bit less. I would say most of my 10% comes from a world where there's some major event / vibe shift that takes us into a very different political reality than we're in today.
Yeah.
Although there was this one thing recently, let me see if I can find that real quick. It was really notable. I'm gonna have to ask Grok, can you find the tweet about congressional staffer survey on most important issues? See if we can find this. Oh, well, Grok is unable to reply. Grok is offline. We'll have to come back
Can
to
you
that.
find the can you search X for a tweet about congressional staffers and their views on AI federal law?
Let me check what's been posted about that and pull a key takeaway. I'm not seeing a clear hit in the recent posts I can access. It may be buried in a thread, phrased differently, or just not widely shared yet. If you have a name, a handle, or a specific phrase from the post, I can try again with that. Otherwise, the safe takeaway is that staffer sentiment can shift quickly, especially if a big incident or political moment changes the mood.
Okay, thank you, Q.
Grok will be able to find it, but Grok is offline at the moment. So anyway, we'll come back to it. But the observation was among, I believe it was a survey of congressional staff that showed AI issues creeping into, I believe, even the top 5 most important issues from their perspective, which doesn't mean obviously that it is going to get done, but I think it at least creates conditions where they're like, it sounds like congressional staff have got enough scary demos that they are like ripe for a vibe shift at least. That doesn't mean we're going to see one.
Or, people are targeting money, right? So congressional staffers are targeting money and positions post anyway. So this has started to become like, hey, there's money on both sides of the issue. So we can, and they're being lobbied also. You got to remember, all of the firms have big lobbying teams. So even if it's not in your top 5 issues, like you're being told like all the time, like you're having these like, soirees, and you're having these parties and going out, and everyone's talking about it. And like, the guy who has invited you is like, hey, this is what OpenAI is doing. This is what, Anthropic is doing. This is what Google is doing, right? Like it's kind of inescapable, right? Like the amount of money going in. So
I'm just scrolling through my recent Twitter likes real quick to see if I can pull it up.
okay, losing control of AI, 35%, ranking as the number 3 overall long-term challenge.
Yeah.
This is from Punchbowl, and I will pull it up.
Nice.
And I will pull it up here. I will share screen. There we go. So, among the most important problems to solve in the next 250 years, senior staffers pointed to the national debt and federal deficit, 51%, political polarization, 45%, and losing control of AI, 35%.
On the 250-year timeline,
Third
there
on
might be
that
doing
list
some work.
puts losing control of AI in the same conversation as structural issues like debt and polarization. It doesn't guarantee legislation, but it suggests staffers are primed for a serious policy push if the political winds shift.
Indeed, Q. Please speak only when you're spoken to. Only when you're. Thank you.
All right. Let's go back to the reveal. So we're both at 10%. Market says 20. FutureSearch called it 68. Whoa. There's a very strong case that this outcome has already been triggered. The Defense Authorization Act.
It's an AI safety bill. Like it's not like Defense Authorization Act. They slide some AI bits into it. Like that doesn't. Yeah, I don't. This is one of those resolution criteria things.
Yeah, well, it's FutureSearch is definitely way off from the market there. FutureSearch is still somehow outscoring us in aggregate.
Do you correct for overconfidence bias when you make predictions?
Not in the classic way that some Bayesian scoring rules do.
Yeah.
We're penalizing just the difference between our guess and the market without a sort of extreme penalty. Like if you were to guess 0%, in some scoring methods, that would be like infinite penalty.
Right.
But we're not doing that here. We could certainly look at rescoring this. I don't think it's obvious we're doing the best thing, or even I don't think it's necessarily even obvious what the best thing would be, but it's certainly not obvious we're doing it. Okay, will Sam Altman be out as OpenAI CEO before 2027? I have to say, it seems pretty unlikely these days. His position would seem pretty unassailable, barring some crazy scandal or whatever. I would have to put that at 1%, I think.
I'd say it's 20%.
20%?
Yeah.
Well, you know what? I'm going to change mine up only because I know that the market itself is going to have that little, it has a hard time getting down to 1%. So I'll put it at 3. I'm guessing the market's going to come in at 4 or 5.
I'm guessing
but I think it's actually, I would say it's even lower than that. But so tell me what's the story for 20%? Because that's a high number.
I mean, I'm not sure he really wants to continue as CEO. And I think, I saw him bringing in Fiji as kind of preparation to hand over the reins. Because do you really want to take the company public? Do you want to be a public company CEO? Do you want to undergo the scrutiny? Do you want to be on earnings calls? These are like the questions that you got to answer. And I'm not sure that he really wants that heat. He's not getting paid for it also. So I feel like he would rather be in the chairman position where Brett Taylor is. And because especially once the company goes public, a lot of the deal making is going to be very regular. Like you have capital market, you have bonds, you have equities, you go raise money, you pump that through, right? Like there's not that much of this kind of behind the doors, closed doors deal making. So that's my guess. Like he may not want to fight for it. So
let's find out what the market says. 11%. Wow.
So they're giving a 1 in 9,
7,
and giving a 1 in 5. You gave a 1 in 33.
Yeah, that is surprisingly high to me. But okay. Onward we go. Will a humanoid robot walk on Mars before a human does by 2035?
Oh, 100%. 90%.
Yeah, rovers don't count, to be clear. It's got to be a humanoid. I mean, sending robots ahead of us certainly makes a lot of sense, given that SpaceX is in the, or at least via Tesla is in the humanoid business. That also makes a lot of sense. So, and yeah, we have a full decade for it to happen. Yeah, I mean, I think I'm up there with you. It seems like if it doesn't happen, again, we've probably shifted to another timeline, right? Where it's like, well, are we not launching a lot to space anymore? Are we not going to Mars anymore? What happened that caused us to be in a timeline where we're not sending a humanoid to Mars in the next 10 years? I think there's some real, will Kalshi be around to pay out in those scenarios is another interesting question. I think I would answer this this sort of becomes an X risk question for me. It's if we're sending stuff to space, if we're generally on the happy timeline, it feels overwhelmingly likely. And if it's not happening, I feel like we're in probably a pretty unappealing world. And so how does that, you kind of can't, if you're playing Kalshi rules, you can't really price in the chances that there's, civilization is wiped out and there's no SpaceX and there's no Kalshi. So I think I'm with you, although I would flag that my I'll say 90%. You said even higher, right?
I said 90.
90 also.
Yeah.
I think that the actual chance is lower, but I'm calibrating myself to Kalshi having this. It's conditional on Kalshi still being there to resolve, and I do think that's actually taking out a lot of the chances that this wouldn't happen. 50%. FutureSearch calls it 9%. What is going on?
Wow.
SpaceX's crude ambitions have slipped well into the 30s. 9%. That's really something.
I think this is where I would say models cannot predict the future based on the past, right? Like, I think it's just hard for the models to predict the future if you only have in distribution events. So this is definitely out of distribution.
Yeah, although maybe we're wrong and it's right. I mean, but it's a. So we agree on this, right? The only viable pathway relies on SpaceX. This is what's striking. We said the same sentence basically, right? It's going to happen via SpaceX with Tesla.
Oh no, I don't know if
humanoids.
it's going to be SpaceX, but it's probably going to be SpaceX. But I don't, the Chinese are only like a little bit behind. They're maybe about 5 years behind. They have a reusable now, and they're second mover. So the second mover moves faster than the first mover. They can steal some stuff, and they can steal some IP, and they can hire some engineers, et cetera, right? And they know it can be done. Knowing it can be done is actually like a huge thing. Like the nuclear weapon, for example, they knew that the Germans had a breakthrough, and they were able to, and the Russians knew that the Americans had the weapon, and they were able to go towards it much faster. So I think even if SpaceX doesn't make it, I think there will be another entity that does, and you might not even need reusable rockets because humanoid robots don't need to come back, unlike humans. So I suspect it's just gonna be like a railgun with like humanoid robot factory assembly machine, which takes off and like just lands there, like crash lands, and you can send dozens of them. You're not restricted. You don't have food requirements. You only need the one humanoid robot to like wake up, turn on the solar panels, power up, and then kind of unpack. So, and we almost have manual dexterity done, right? I've seen like manual dexterity, demonstrations, which are pretty good. Like you can fold clothes at this point, which means you can probably start to assemble things. So I think we're almost there. It's just like the combination of the things that you need and like the budget, and you have 5 cycles basically to Mars, 5 windows every 18 months. So
fascinating. Well, yeah, I still, I mean, FutureSearch and the market both make me feel like I'm overconfident, but 9% definitely feels really low. Okay, well, on to number 10. Will the AI 2027 report's predictions be borne out by January 27? That would resolve to a yes if the scenario has been roughly correct through January 27. Details can miss, but the important through lines should be correct. Resolution is a poll of manifold moderators. 30-70% splits resolve proportionally. Oh my God. This is like turtles all the way down. We're asked to assess whether manifold moderators will agree that the scenario has been roughly correct. I think it's on path to be roughly correct. I mean, the meme recently I'm sure you've seen, has been people like saying, manically flipping to the Q3 of 2026 part of AI 2027 to see what comes next.
So
I feel like
I'm reading through AI 2027. So, and the bad path, because it's tough because there's actually 2 paths. AI 2027 ends in October 2027. And in October 2027, basically Agent 4 is live, and a misalignment memo is leaked to the New York Times. Public is suspicious. Foreign allies are outraged to realize that they've been carefully placated with glimpses of obsolete models, et cetera, et cetera. So this has already happened. Like the October 2027 thing has already happened basically, and that just happened in the last month or so with the Mythos Fable thing. So about 2 months, 3 months ahead of time. And at that point, AI 2027 branches off into slowdown or race. And the race condition by the endpoint in December, Agent 5 is live. It has charismatic avatars, and it has super persuasion. And it effectively takes over the government by the end of 2027. In slowdown, they start to have a Defense Production Act. And government takes over open brain, and they head towards a US-China deal by the end of 2027. So these are the two paths.
But note that for this question, we're only through January 2027.
Only through January. Well, yes. Then it's already, I would say it's already been achieved. No. So January 2027, AI takes some jobs. Agent 2 never finishes learning.
Continual learning comes online. This is a tough question.
We're judging resolution criteria at this point, right? We're not judging the
Yeah.
future. Yeah.
So yeah, I'll maybe go a little bit higher. I'll say 65%. I feel like maybe I'll go 70%. I think like the general vibe is that like they've been prescient, and my guess is that people will broadly sort of say, yeah, they've been, history judges them as having been, having shown strong foresight. That I think we can be reasonably confident on. Manifold moderators, I wouldn't say those are easily pleased people. Are they going to be difficult to impress, or will they do a bunch of rules layering? We're in like a theory of mind of manifold moderators there, but I think there's some definite risk of a no answer, even if like by my lights the answer would be yes. So I don't know really where that should leave me, but I'm putting down 70%. What do you say?
50%.
And the market says 20%.
Ooh.
And FutureSearch also called it exactly 20%. FutureSearch is really running away with the points now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I don't know. We probably talked about that one enough. I'm not sure there's that much more to say. That is a low number. The core miss, delayed takeoff. Well, I don't know, man. Not sure takeoff is all that delayed. Okay, well, there we go. 2 bonus questions. Will an AI... I think we know the answer to this one. Will an AI win an IMO Gold in 2026? What is happening here?
It's 2026.
Let me think this through for a second. That's a fun one.
Yeah, I think we should expect this to be yes.
80% yes, 90% yes.
Yeah, I mean, we got an IMO Gold last year, right? With 5 out of 6 questions right. So I think it'd be pretty shocking if we didn't get a gold this year. I'm going to say 95. What did you say?
Call it, I don't know, 90%.
Yeah, unless I'm misunderstanding this, it seems like this happened last year, and we usually don't go backwards. Let's see what the market has to say. 68, and FutureSearch says 19. Wait a second.
Maybe resolution criteria again. I think some of the rules are that you have to have like a limited amount of compute, or you have to use an open source model and they can monitor the amount of compute that you use.
Let me pull that into focus.
Explicitly excluding independent lab announcements.
Right. That explains the mismatch. If the rules exclude lab announcements or require specific constraints like open source, limited compute, or competition conditions, then prior wins don't automatically count. It's not saying the capability isn't there. It's just a narrower, more formal target.
Yeah, and FutureSearch says the IMO Grand Challenge is effectively dormant. So yeah, I think we can maybe call somewhat foul on the question there, or the resolution criteria, but that's a strange one. So okay, last one from Manifold this time. Will an AI created song this is relevant, crack the Billboard Hot 100 top 20 before 2027? From your discussion earlier, it sounded like we were maybe already getting close with some of this K-pop stuff.
I thought we were already there. I think it depends on the resolution criteria, but there was already an AI artist who was on Billboard. I'm not sure it was a top 100.
Interesting.
Largely created by AI.
Let me think this through. I treat that as very plausible, but still dependent on the fine print. If the rules allow songs substantially AI written or produced with human performance or production layered on top, then yes, it could break into the top 20. But if they require something like fully AI generated end to end with no human involvement, that's a much tougher bar. and could explain why markets are skeptical.
Let me turn off Q for a moment. So I'm on the Billboard page, and 6 songs have been on various charts, but not maybe the main Billboard chart. Most notable milestone: fully AI generated country track "Walk My Walk" by the AI act Breaking Rust hit #1 on the country digital song sales chart. And Zania Monet have also charted on the Billboard radio airplay and R&B lists. So they're there, but they're not on the, I think, main chart. They're on the genre charts.
You know, I had a really funny experience talking to my brother actually about my AI music, and I was like, "You should listen to some of the stuff I've made. It's really good." And he was like, "I'll never listen to it." I, basically like just categoric opposition. And he's like somebody who, he works at Google. He codes with Gemini all day, every day. So he's not like not boycotting AI in general, but his reaction to the music was quite disinterested and just like, this should be something humans do for humans. And that was kind of it from his perspective. I don't know, will people even know? The fact that there's already been one in the country category suggests it probably will happen before too long. I don't know. These things are. This one's a little hard to predict. I'll say 60 because just one in the top 20 doesn't seem that crazy.
I'll probably go 75, but I expect my expectation is that it's right now like 25 or something. Like these things seem to be like behind on the number. So yeah, I go 75.
Market says 21%. You called the market. FutureSearch says 14.
Yeah, they seem to have this kind of 6 month ago kind of view of the market. So if you calibrate to 6 months ago, this is roughly where the market is. It's what I call living in the future. No, the trick is you have to live in the future, but you also have to calibrate how far ahead you are of the market. Because if not, if you make an investment, you end up getting run over by the market because the market's too slow. So you have to calibrate your investment time period to how far ahead you're ahead of the market.
Well, I don't know what to make of today's exercise, to be honest with you. I mean, I was quite surprised by a lot of the FutureSearch answers. It does beat us in the points, at least as we're scoring them here. You and we had very similar answers to a lot of things, and we have very similar point totals. And we both had moments where we sort of said what we think the true answer is, and then kind of what we think the market answer will be, which is how we're being scored. So I'm not sure what the takeaways are from this. I mean, the individual questions are interesting, but at the FutureSearch level and at the market calibration level, I was surprised to the point where something feels kind of off somewhere. And is it on the AI side, or is it the market side, or is it just you and me? I'm not really sure how to boil this down into a takeaway. Would you like to attempt it?
I think like we're all trying to make sense of this information, and we're trying to make sense of it together. I think the market is behind, and you have to not fear the fact that you're ahead of the market. So it's okay. I also think there's a lot of rules lawyering going on, and this has been the issue with the prediction markets from the beginning, which is that you have to really pay attention to the rules and to how these things are resolved. And people who do tend to make better bets. And a lot of the money being made is actually from amateurs who actually just read the question and don't read the resolution criteria. So
yeah, there was a meticulous one. I used to look at this. Let's look at it real quick, and then we can wrap up for today. When will the first general, is this the one? I think it might be slightly different. There's like a related questions, pretty similar, but a bit distinct. Let me go back. Oh, this is a more synthetic thing. Okay. Yeah, okay. This one has been an interesting one to watch. And I think the resolution criteria are instructive. So okay, so when will the first weekly general AI system be devised, tested, and publicly announced? This one got to a low of like early 2026. I think this might be the low. As of late 2023, it was expected early 2026. So in other words, 6 months ago already. But when you do look into the resolution criteria here, the criteria are quite problematic. And this this Winogrand one, this has like been passed a long time ago. This was like laughably simple by today's model standards. It's like pronoun disambiguation, like really simple stuff. Stuff that GPT-4 could probably have satisfied this criteria. Scoring 75% on the SAT as well. Like if not GPT-4, then like something in that realm could do it. Learning the game Montezuma's Revenge. I don't know if this how recently this has been tried. I would say we've seen Claude Plays Pokemon is probably a comparable challenge, and we're probably kind of there on that as well. But this able to pass a Turing test of the type that would win this Loebner Silver Prize, when you dig into those rules, it's really, it all kind of comes down to that. It's like you have to undergo adversarial testing. The format of the competition is a standard Turing test. A human judge simultaneously holds text conversations with a computer and a human. And basically, there's just too many clues. It's too easy to tell an AI from a human, not because of things that the AI can't do that the human can do, but as we've talked about other times, like because the human will answer, "I don't know what you're talking about," so readily, whereas the AI never will, and that just creates it. It makes it very easy for an expert judge to tell when they're talking to an LLM. So I think this whole question has kind of gone haywire, and like I don't really think there's too much meaning there anymore. Intuitively, the AIs have passed the Turing test, right? Like I think everybody kind of agrees that we're past that as a useful way to evaluate them. Like it's just sort of, that's now kind of a historical frame. But it turns out that this subtle miss of like the AIs are actually too broadly knowledgeable to pass as human is the thing that is like keeping these questions from resolving in the way that they probably should, or that the original authors however many years ago probably would have intuitively thought that they would, given just if you told them what today's AIs look like, they would be like, yes, that passes, this would be a yes. But yet we didn't write the questions quite the right way.
It's also because they've been banned from imitating humans, right? Like every model creator, closed source has been trying to, not make them imitate humans as much as possible, and to make sure that humans understand that you're not, unless you have. I just heard China has banned a bunch of companies from doing AI companions. So that just dropped, I think, like 24, 48 hours ago. So they're going to have much, much stronger restrictions. You can have AI companions for older people. So older people, they're allowing it. But for younger people, they're banning, and they're like, you can't make them too attractive. You can't have like dating life. You can't have like love life. Like a bunch of like very specific restrictions. And you know how they are. They're gonna stamp out. They're gonna control the app stores. And they're gonna stamp it out. Right. So one of the big verticals, and Chinese companies have made a lot of money on this. There's a lot of money on like dating and romantic, AI chatbots, and I don't know how they call Moe. You'll see them. I think you'll see them when you go there. I call these Moe games. They've been things.
There's also been talk, and this has been too speculative probably to say much smart about it yet, but in the same 48-hour time frame, there's been talk of potentially not letting Chinese government not letting Chinese frontier companies open source their models in the same way that they have been as well. And that could be a huge change to the game board. Not a surprising, or not a particularly surprising one to me. I would say, if anything, I've been more surprised by how long the Chinese government has been willing to just let it rip. I'm much less surprised that they're actually kind of taking an interest now and saying, hey, maybe we should have a little bit of government. But
it turns out they're as exposed to North Korean hackers as the US is, even more so actually. So because there's no real sanctions against North Korea, and they're an ally, and the North Koreans don't care as long as they get money. So it seems the North Korean illegal activity is pretty significant for them too, and their IT systems are weaker because they didn't have as much of a honeypot with like Bitcoin ransoms as the US did. So it seems they are under, as capabilities diffuse, the less capitalized players are actually more at risk than the more capitalized players who actually would have to handle these things first. Because the less capitalized players always thought, I'm not a target, and now you're a target.
Well, that'll definitely be a topic of conversation, I am sure, on the ground in China. I'll be there for the next couple of weeks, and definitely very excited to go. It'll be an adventure in many ways, and I hope to come back with some, very local, I'm sure, and parochial, but nevertheless some sense of the vibe and the expectation to learn, and I'll try to learn as much as I can in the back. Anything else you want to cover today before we break?
No, let's break. And to all the viewers, we had a lot of viewers today. So we had we got up to 2K plus on my stream, maybe 800 on your stream. So we had like almost 3K. So to all the viewers, I think we finally see some bye-bye.
Thanks for being with us on A on the AM. Later.
Thank you.